Well, as always, it's a very good afternoon, good morning to you, or good day to you, wherever you're listening to this coaching cafe. My name's Natalie Ashdown from the Open Door Coaching Group, joined today by the fabulous Paula Jones Hunt. Hi, Paula.
Morning.
And today's coaching cafe, we are thinking about workforce engagement and wondering why is workforce engagement only 20% and what we can do about it. So before we begin, let me acknowledge the traditional owners, the custodians on the lands on which we meet today, and their continuing connection to the land and the waters of the communities of Australia and the lands from all around the world, internationally, where you might be joining us today. We pay our respects to them, to their elders past, present and emerging, and elders from Indigenous communities from all around the world. So going quickly to today's agenda, because we've got lots to talk about as we always do. It's great to see so many people joining us today. Feel free to really jump in and engage in our conversation. We are talking about the Gallup State of the Australian and New Zealand Workplace 2023, the report that Gallup released just recently. We're thinking about engagement specifically and what can we do about this, and specifically how coaching enables engagement. And this is going to kick off a 4 or 5 part series talking about engagement in the workplace and what we can do as coaches, as leaders and managers to address this really concerning statistic we have around engagement in our Australian, New Zealand workplaces. So we're going to kind of lay down the scene today, giving you some of the stats, debriefing a part of the report that I'm finding quite interesting. And then we'll start to turn our conversation around to, well, what can we do? How does coaching enable engagement? What can we do as leaders and coaches? So as I mentioned, the start of a 4 or 5 part series, very keen to start to get your engagement and your ideas. As always, for those of you that are new, we are all about creating a community here. We're about sharing our learned experience and having thought-provoking conversations, hence kicking off this topic. And of course, for the regulars who come back every Friday listening to us live, or for all of you regulars on the podcast, thank you so much. Our podcast is so popular. It's one of the most popular podcasts in the space, and we do get many downloads. So wherever you're listening, thanks for joining us. As always, oh, Marissa, you're in Texas. Oh, welcome. As always, if you'd like to, please engage with us via the chat box. We can pick up your comments and your questions and your thought-provoking conversations. If you're interested in your CCUs, of course, your ICF professional development, please just hang on the line until the end of the session and we'll put that up for you and you can take a screenshot. All right, let's go to the topic of our conversation today. Paula, I know that this is going to be new to you, seeing the statistics here, and so I just wanted to kind of get your initial reaction and also the reaction of our people participating today. This is the statistics from the workforce engagement report, Gallup's State of the Workplace in Australia and New Zealand. I've got the link there on the page for you all, but please feel free just to go to gallup.com, type in workplace or type in state of the global workplace, and you can pick up the entire report yourself. But the statistics are really concerning me. I looked at this report, had a good read of it, both the Australian and New Zealand report and the global report. And basically the statistics are that only 20% of our workforce are what they would call thriving at work or engaged. In fact, 67% of our workforce are quiet quitting, so they're not engaged, and 13% are loud quitting, meaning they're actively disengaged. 80% of our workforce are basically not engaged. Greetings, John. Thank you for acknowledging the Indigenous country you're dialing in from, and Wollongong, New South Wales. Paula, I'm just going to throw to you for initial reactions. Interestingly, Australia is about on par with New Zealand and about on par, slightly higher when it comes to quiet quitting than our OECD counterparts at 64%. But as I said, Paula, throwing it to you just for some initial reactions.
Yeah, I guess, look, I am I surprised? I'm not entirely sure I am surprised, but I mean, they're some astounding figures, really. And I think this is part of I think it's part of the COVID. And I know it's been a while since COVID, since we were going through COVID, but I actually think it part of it is a flow-on effect from COVID. I'd also suggest there's quite a bit of high interest, like think that the economics of the world is impacting on here too. Because if you're not happy with other things, you may not be happy at work. But I also think we haven't necessarily quite got hybrid workplaces working. And I mean, the number one reason people are unhappy generally, it tends to head back towards your manager being able to be a great coach and a great leader. And I don't necessarily think we're spending enough time in really developing those skills.
Yes, I agree with you. And the report does talk about the impact of COVID for sure. And I imagine the future reports, 2024, 2025, will talk about cost of living adjustments as well. Yeah, for sure. You do talk about the responsibility as managers, and that's really where we're going to today, the responsibility of leaders, of managers, and of coaches, for sure. Ian, yes, I agree with you. Potentially the work is just transactional. I'll have to go back to the study and the detail of the study to see the type of employees that were actually surveyed. But this is a global survey. They get hundreds of thousands of participants across the world. So it's a very broad representation of the workplace as opposed to just people in the transactional space. Now, the other thing I want to share with you is that I hear what you're saying around COVID, Paula, and that is real. The impacts of COVID, the report does have information around that. The other staggering statistic for me, though, was that at 20% engagement, Australia being a 20% engagement in the workplace, that is nearly a 10-year high. So engagement in our workplaces, and I don't know why I only just picked it up, engagement in our workplaces has been low
So
low, yes, for many, many years. In fact, the report says that we're on a 10-year high, and I'm like, 10-year high at 20%, that's not high for me. But, and interestingly, only 3% below the global average. So the global average over 10 years is 23%, and we're falling just a little bit below. And our New Zealand counterparts, you're beating us by 1% in this regard. So this is something that I thought has been going, and as we can see from the statistics, it's been going on for quite some time. And yes, we have had COVID, but that's why I really wanted to start focusing on this as we have the series towards the end of the year. I wanted to lay down some foundations as well that also came from the report. And please, everyone can jump into the chat and tell us what your reactions are to hearing those statistics. What does it mean? So it's suggesting the report that 67% of Australians are quiet quitting, and it means that they are filling a seat and watching the clock. They put in the minimum effort required, but they're psychologically disconnected from their employer. And I know, Paula, you've got a lot to say about psychological safety in workplaces and around mental health as well. It says that although they're minimally productive, they're more likely to be stressed and burnt out than engaged workers because they feel lost and disconnected from their workplace. So this is now giving us a definition of what we mean by quiet quitting: filling the seat, watching the clock, disconnected, putting in minimal effort, probably more stressed and burned out than their counterparts, and they're feeling lost and disconnected from their workplace. And I wanted to turn to quickly some of the reasons that people are quite quitting. Now, these reasons came from the report, but also came from other research that we've done and from our experience in working with different people. Uh, Paula, I've got a lot of different reasons up there. Lack of learning, they're doing repetitive work, managers are unapproachable, lack of clear goals, needing stronger guidance, lack of recognition for contribution. So these are the reasons why people might be quiet quitting, because there's a lack of creativity in the work, there's a lack of respect, or there's values misalignment, lack of promotion, lack of fair chance for promotion, no autonomy, managers being unapproachable. I suppose as I share those reasons why, Paula, is anything standing out to you?
No, I probably, if you'd asked me, I probably would have come up with most of those. And I think too,
Mm,
through the COVID period and overall, is that that organizations are asking more from people. I've been working with lots of organizations where because of COVID, there cuts of staff or they had to redistribute work. And so people are working more. And so then if you're working more, but feeling like you're not being respected or it's a values misalignment, it's going to impact more. If you're working more, but the work you're working on isn't creative, isn't the type of work that you want to be doing, it's going to be impacting you. If you're working more, but you're not being recognized, if you're working more, but your manager's not, your manager may in fact be working twice as hard as well. And so not knowing what to do or not being able to help with that as well, and not knowing when that might stop. Is this the new norm for me? Am I now going to have to
mm,
work this much all the time? I think they're all very valid in there. And Ian raised about volunteers as well. And Ian, I'm with you on this one. I'm on a number of volunteer organisations, and I think there's volunteer burnout, and I think there's volunteers who are also stretched to capacity because there's not enough. And so there's not enough, but you have to do more work. So I absolutely agree with you on that one. And Andrew, who raised narcissistic leaders and managers. And unfortunately, sometimes senior leadership can actually attract people for whom power is what motivates them. And it might motivate them, but it doesn't really create a great working environment. So I'm with you there too, on that one, because if you've got people who get into roles and the way they got into the role was a values misalignment, then they're going to create distrust within their team.
yeah, it really shocked me. But then in the coaching I'm doing, I'm starting to go, well, I can hear the lack of engagement. No, I wouldn't say I can hear the lack of engagement. I can feel and see why people would become disengaged, because each of these buttons we have on our slide here are actually being pushed, I suppose. So
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about it too, people in this space might actually be still performing in their role and getting the job done, but sitting there being really unhappy with it. And if you think
yeah,
about it from a human perspective, is that the type of organization we want to be developing? Is that how we create a space where people are getting the best out of themselves? And that impacts personal lives as well. If you are unhappy at work and you're going home, how are you connecting with your relationships with other people? So I think it's not just how do we make sure that organizations do the best job they can, but remembering that people have a whole life of themselves, and that it impacts in other places. If you're unhappy at work, it impacts elsewhere. And Marissa asked, do you feel that a lack of trust is a driver too? And I'd say absolutely. If you think about
mm,
organisations who had to take very extreme measures during COVID, in order to bring their people back, you're then saying to them, well, I want you to come back, even though when the chips were down, we didn't probably do the right thing. Even
Mm.
though when, we're asking you to do more, but we're not really recognize it. Would you trust me to make other good decisions for you? Marissa, I think trust is a big one.
Yes, I agree with you. Yeah, and thank you everyone that's sharing the chat. It's really getting our conversation going, which is what we're really trying to do as part of our introductory. And there's a lot of comments here around, we need to work to live, not live to work. And I'm reflecting on what you're talking about, Paula. And I know that there's mental health first aid, other mental health first aid trainers on the line as well. So shout out to you. And this phenomenon of quiet quitting and the lack of feeling engaged in my work can have an impact on our mental health, and as you said, can have a flow-on impact at home as well. So um, we're talking about something I think that is worthy of a conversation. There's no doubt about that. But I want to now kind of switch our thoughts to the good news. So the good news is that the statistics really clearly show that 70% of team engagement is attributed to the manager. And the State of the Workforce report clearly says that the people in this quiet quitting, the 67% within our workplace, they are winnable. It's not that they're lost, I suppose. They're not going into uh, that other category. They're winnable. The key here is if they have a manager who knows how to motivate them, if they have a manager who knows how to engage them. And of course, everyone on the line, I know you're already passionate about coaching. I know you're already great practitioners. Many of you are alumni. Uh, I know that I'm speaking to people who are champions of coaching within their workplace. So it will come as no surprise to you when I say that 70% of team engagement is attributed to the managers. What do we need to do? How do we need to approach it? How do we need to win workers over? Well, it comes down to coaching and those great coaching questions and starting those engaging conversations. And I want to draw people's attention, Paula, to our when we start to talk about what are we going to do about it, how do we approach it, I want to start with strengths-based conversations because we've seen this over and over that managers who focus on strengths-based conversations in their coaching, um, these statistics come from Gallup as well. You start to see improvement in engagement, 73% uplift in engagement. That's what we're talking about. 36% increase in productivity. Those people that have done our certificate for in workplace and business coaching will be familiar with these statistics because we have a whole module on it. But a 15% increase in sales, 29% increase in profit, 49% lower turnover in staff. So it's one thing to have low turnover, but as we're talking about, we want that improvement in engagement. And look at this other big statistics, which is really standing out for us here. 67% of employees are more engaged when their manager focuses on their strengths. We get a reduction in absenteeism, but that's a real standout statistic for me as well. Paula, what are you, and I see people jumping into the chat. And, Sean, thank you for saying everyone's winnable. And I love this comment. Thank you. I love all your comments, obviously. But Sean, you've offered everyone's winnable, but only if leaders and coaches have a genuine care for their people, are genuinely thinking about how do I connect, how do I care, how do I have these conversations. And Sean, a lot of people are agreeing with you as well. Paula, 67% of employees are more engaged when their managers focus on strengths. So we have obviously a strengths-based coaching approach, and we are including this module. We have for many, many years now included it in our certificate for in workplace and business coaching. But you've seen these kind of things in your experience. Tell us what you're thinking about this.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the 49% lower turnover in staff. And one of the key points here too is often when you have not a great place, not a where managers aren't great, what you actually lose in your turnover is the really high performing people. So what
Mm.
you're losing is the great people from your team, and people who aren't so great, who don't think they can go anywhere else, will stay. So it is actually more impact than just the 49%, because if you're losing your best people, that's not great. I have seen teams in organizations where overall organization engagement is low, but if you get a great manager, those engagement scores are better than others, because the managers are really driving the focus on the people. And when you and
Yes.
you know, for a very long time, I've talked about, it's people talk about you've got to focus on your stakeholders, you've got to focus on your clients. My philosophy has always been, if you focus on your people, if you have really great people, you don't actually have to worry about your clients, because your people are going to worry about your clients. Your people are going to make sure that they're doing the right thing for your stakeholders. So if you bring this back down to that human element, the more someone is engaged, the higher their productivity. It says it right here. And if you are taking that coaching approach and really caring about your people, it doesn't mean that your communication doesn't always have to tell them you're allowed to say, no, we can't do that. And there are some things we have to do because that's the job. But if you are putting that in a way which really helps bring people along and coach them through that, and being honest with them, and then they can trust you, then you're going to get those better results.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think about a lot of things as you're talking as well, Paula. And we have seen case studies exactly what you talked about within our client base, where organizational engagement scores might be 23%, but you've got this little, not little, but you've got a business unit, an outlier or a business unit that's got 75 or 89%
Mm.
engagement. So it comes back to actually thinking about, well, what are they doing? What is that manager doing that's making a difference? And it is around coaching people. It's making those connections. It's been able to show that genuine care. And when it comes to strengths-based conversations, we talk about a lot about listening, engaging, asking people, what motivates you, what inspires you about your work, what energizes you about your work, but also thinking about the attributes of people that energize it. So the client that I was talking to just yesterday, she said, "I love teaching people. I love learning, developing, growing people." So I think often people, our workforce, are giving managers on a platter. They're telling them, this is how you can inspire, motivate, and engage me if you connect me into work that allows me to grow and develop people. Instead, you've got me over here doing transactions, looking after complaints and the negativity and problem solving and etc. etc. So um, I think it's also about listening more to people about what they're saying actually inspires and engages them about their work, and seeing what we can do about that as well.
And sometimes it is really as simple as, what is one thing that if it was changed would make a big impact for you in your role? What's
Great
one
question.
one
Mm,
thing? And let's look at, can we make that happen? And sometimes that one thing might be more resources, which is not always possible. But if we delve into that, what is it about the resourcing that we need, and what's one change we could make that would make an improvement for you? So I think sometimes organizations too, and HR are really good at this. We sort of go with the big picture. How do we change engagement? What programs do we introduce? Whereas if you just went to the one-on-one, you would actually probably hit more of an impact. I mean, that's not to say don't do those big things as well, because some of them are really cool. But from an individual's perspective, the number one person that they interact with in that space is their manager. And if their manager is asking them really great questions and genuinely delving in and listening, then it's going to have a bigger impact.
yeah, absolutely. And Sean's offered that, if we can focus on strengths in two ways, think about what people are good at. So we talk about this a lot in our programs, that it's one thing to focus on what people are good at. Now, the interesting thing from yesterday's coaching conversation was that this manager I'm talking about is very, very good at solving people's problems, at resolving conflict, at being the negotiator, at making decisions, etc., etc. She's a bit of a go-to. So there's one thing, yes, to do what you're good at. She's actually very good at this. But as Sean has pointed out, does she like it? Is it what she likes doing? Is it what energizes her? So we need to look at not just what they're good at, but does that task, does that interaction, does that what they're required to do, is it something that they like doing? Are they energized by it? And with this manager in particular, the answer was no. She wants to pour more of her energy into relationship building, collaboration, leadership, enabling people, and she's really heavily in the thinking strengths around um, critical thinking and having to make decisions making and conflict and negativity and problem solving. So we want, as Sean has pointed out, a really special combination of the both. And Ian's jumped in and said, you might get an answer of, oh, yeah, so what do you like doing? And you get nothing. There's nothing in my job. Um, and he says, can also engage people as first aiders or wardens or even non-work activities. So you can engage people as first aid or as wardens or non-work activities. So running social activities, running hobby talks and similar. So maybe they are in a role that's not particularly engagement, but how can we engage them in other parts of the work, other parts of the engagement within the organisation? And as Ian points out, we have to ask them. So I think that kind of lays out a really good foundation for where our conversations are going. Over the next couple of weeks, I want to introduce you to a couple of key coaching tools that we're going to be using. You know about strengths-based conversations and all the different questions we can ask, but we want to dig into those a little bit more. We're going to have a couple of guest speakers come and talk about engagement from a leadership point of view, what they have seen, what their experience has been, how they've enabled engagement as well. So I'm really looking forward to digging into this with you all over the next few weeks and thinking really deeply about what our role is as leaders, as managers, but particularly as coaches, and how we as a collective and a community can start to turn around this 20% figure. So it's lovely to be able to kick off the conversations. Thank you. Yes, I'm really energized by it as well. So thanks everyone who's seeing that and putting that into the chat box as well. So I look forward to engaging with you. Thanks for engaging with us today. And I look forward really as a collective and as a community about how we can start to see this uplift. Let's aim towards that 70%. 73% improvement engagement across the board. So, of course, with that in mind, we do have our diploma of organisational coaching coming up, our certificate for workplace and business coaching laden with strengths-based conversations, leader as coach, a great opportunity to start getting your managers to start thinking about coaching, and of course, our mental health first aid training is extremely popular. Paul is doing a lot of that work, and our leader is coach work as well. So there's lots of opportunities to engage across the board, and of course you can feel free to chat with us. So thank you everyone. It's been wonderful to have you connect with us on such an important topic, and we look forward to your continuing ideas as we move through this series. So thank you.